lost ship returned after 5 years. A strange incident very few people ever came to know about. Today, we uncover that forgotten truth. In the early 1700s, the port of Dublin in Ireland was busy and full of noise. Dawn had not yet broken, yet the lantern lights of the shops around the harbour were flickering softly. The cold mist rising from the sea wrapped around the streets like a white veil. At that time, in one corner of the harbour, a ship was standing quietly, the Ouzel galley. It didn't look very different from other ships, but its destiny was something that would one day place it among the most mysterious events in the world. Yet that early morning, no one could have imagined what was going to happen. The ship's captain, John McDaniel, was calm, steady, and sharp. His sailors respected him deeply. They knew this journey would be long, dangerous, and unpredictable, but also profitable. The ship was headed toward Turkey and the Mediterranean for trade. Spices, silk, copper, these items would be bought and then sold in Ireland for a huge profit. So the sailors boarded the ship with excitement and hope. No one knew that this ship would one day be remembered as the ship of the dead. That morning, when the Ouzel galley finally set sail, the city of Dublin was lively. People stood at the harbour waving goodbye, families shedding tears, because in those times, a voyage across the sea was full of uncertainty. Returning alive was never guaranteed, yet people still went, because the ocean was their livelihood. The Ouzel galley sailed eastward, cutting through the waves of the open sea. For the first few days, everything went smoothly. The sailors laughed, sang, played games. At night, they sat on deck sharing stories of Ireland. But on the third week of the journey, the face of the sea suddenly changed. Dark clouds gathered overhead. The wind grew stronger. The waves turned wild. The ship rocked so violently that the sailors had to hold on to the ropes with all their strength. Captain McDaniel shouted commands in a firm voice. Hold the ropes tight. Save the mast. Keep the bow toward the north. The storm was so fierce that it turned daylight into darkness. Lightning tore across the sky, and thunder shook the sea. The sailors thought their end had come, but somehow, under the captain's skilled guidance, the ship survived the storm. After the storm passed, everyone breathed a sigh of relief, not knowing that this was only the beginning of the real danger waiting for them. A week later, another strange incident occurred. Far away, the sailors saw shapes of other ships, almost like shadows at first. But as they came closer, it became clear who they were: Barbary Coast pirates. These pirates ruled the Mediterranean with terror. Escaping them was nearly impossible. The Ouzel galley tried to flee, but the pirates' ships were faster. They attacked. A fierce fight broke out. The sailors fought with everything they had, but in the end, they were defeated. The pirates captured the ship and took the sailors as prisoners to North Africa. Meanwhile, in Ireland, days passed, then months, then years. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. No news, no message, nothing. The Dublin Harbor authorities eventually declared the Ouzel galley missing forever. Everyone believed it had sunk deep into the sea. Families mourned, the town grieved, and even the court redistributed the ship's ownership, assuming all men were dead. But the truth was far different. The sailors were alive, trapped in distant slave camps, fighting every day just to stay alive. Life in captivity was hell. They were forced into brutal labor, sometimes beaten, sometimes starved. Many began losing hope, but Captain McDaniel refused to let them break. He kept telling them, "One day we will escape. The sea will call us back." That moment finally came. A conflict broke out among the pirates, causing their guards to become careless. One night, the sailors made their move. It was dangerous, but they succeeded. They escaped into the dark, found an abandoned small boat, and pushed it into the sea. By unbelievable luck, they later found a damaged old merchant ship, drifting after a storm. Somehow, they managed to repair it enough to sail. They had no map, no compass, nothing, no one belief. Follow the sunrise, the west lies home. For months they sailed, surviving hunger, thirst, storms, and exhaustion, until one morning, they saw a faint outline of land in the distance. Europe. A few days later, that unbelievable moment arrived. One early morning in Dublin Harbor, people saw a ship approaching, old, damaged, barely holding together, but the sailors standing on it were the same men who had been declared dead years ago. The entire harbor froze in shock. People could not speak, could not believe their own eyes. Those who were thought to be lost forever had walked out of the grave of the sea and returned alive. Their arrival shook the whole city. The port authorities were stunned. The court was speechless. News spread across Europe. How did these men survive? Where had they been all these years? Captain McDaniel said only one thing: the sea does not take a man easily, and if it does, it also knows how to return him. Rumors spread everywhere. Some believed the ship had fallen into a ghostly sea. Some said it slipped into a fold of time. Others claimed a supernatural force brought them back. But the real truth was harsher. Years of imprisonment, starvation, torture, and a desperate escape. Yet in the eyes of the common people, the Ouzel galley became the ship of the dead, a ship that rose again from the depths after 5 long years. When the Ouzel galley finally anchored at the harbor, crowds gathered within minutes. People pushed, climbed on crates, and leaned out of windows just to catch a glimpse of the sailors who had somehow returned from the dead. Mothers who had mourned their sons, wives who had accepted widowhood, children who had grown up hearing stories of fathers they would never meet, all stood frozen, unable to decide whether to cry, scream, or run forward. Captain McDaniel stepped off the ship first. He looked older, thinner, and worn by years of suffering, but his eyes still carried the same calm determination that once led them into the unknown. As his boots touched the wooden pier, the entire harbor fell silent. No one clapped, no one cheered, no one cheered. It was the silence of disbelief. Then, suddenly, someone shouted, "John, John, is it truly you?" A woman pushed through the crowd, trembling, tears streaming down her face. She reached for his hand, as if afraid he might vanish again like a dream. When he nodded, the crowd erupted. People cried, embraced, shouted, and rushed toward their returning loved ones. But joy was not the only thing that returned with the sailors. They brought back questions, hundreds of them. Where had they been? How did they escape? Why did they return after so long? And why did their ship look as though it had sailed through hell itself? The port officials took the sailors into a large hall for questioning. The authorities had to confirm their identities, because legally all of them were dead. Their properties, wages, and rights had already been redistributed. Their names had been carved onto memorials to the world. They were ghosts. When the questioning began, Captain McDaniel laid out everything: the attack, the capture, the brutal years in captivity, the escape, the broken ship drifting through endless waves, and finally the miraculous return. Yet many officials did not believe him. 5 years lost at sea, returning alive with a ruined ship. It sounded impossible. Rumors began spreading through the city. Some believed the sailors had willingly joined the pirates. Some claimed the ship had crossed into a cursed sea, where time flowed differently. Others whispered that the men had died, and what returned were not men at all, but spirits wearing human faces. Stories grew wild. People said the ship sailed silently at night, without crew voices. Fishermen swore they saw strange lights flickering on the Ouzel galley's deck, as if unseen hands moved through the mist. The truth, however, was simpler, but far more painful. The sailors had been forced to work as slaves in a foreign land, suffering day after day. Their bodies carried the scars to prove it. Their eyes held the pain of sleepless nights, hunger, and fear. But people prefer legends over reality.
Soon, newspapers across Europe picked up the story. The Ouzel galley became a symbol of mystery, of survival, and of the strange ways fate plays with those who challenge the sea. Yet despite all the excitement, a serious problem remained. Legally, the sailors were still dead. The ship was still declared lost, and the court was unsure what to do with men who had returned from the grave. Meetings were held for weeks. Lawyers argued endlessly. Who owned the ship now? Should the sailors receive back their lost wages? Were they entitled to any compensation at all? The sailors waited patiently, but frustration grew. They had survived storms, pirates, slavery, and endless suffering, yet now they had to fight for their own identities. During this chaos, Captain McDaniel stayed calm. He said only one thing to his crew: "We have returned once. We will reclaim our lives as well." But the strangest part of the entire story was yet to come, because when the court finally prepared to make a decision, something happened that no one expected.